Welcome to this new video, chapter 12, the design of the tax system. This is the part of problems and application. Remember, this is a book of Gregory Mankiw, Principles of Economics, 7th edition. In this video, we are going to work throughout exercise 1 to 5. So the first question says that in a published source or on the internet, find out whether the United States federal government had a budget deficit or surplus last year. What do policymakers expect to happen over the next few years? And actually, they provide a hint. They provide this website. So I went to this website and you can find a nice graph which is called total revenues and outlays. This is basically a graph which represents in y-axis the percentage of GDP as a percentage of the gross domestic product. In the x-axis we have naturally the time year by year. We have actually the real data until this fact because this is taken in 2011. So as you figure out here, during most of the time of the 20th century, this time the outlays were higher than the revenues. Is what we called in economics budget deficit. So the government is spent more money than the revenue. Just during these around these 2-3 years, we saw a different trend comparison with the other total real total time that we provide here in this graph, where the revenues were above the outlays. Is what we call a budget surplus, but the trend continue as the same as before. Then afterwards we will have the same. We will have here when the in this case the budget deficit was even higher as a percentage of the GDP, and then after this value, this is going to be a kind of convert, but actually it's going to be kind of the same slope. It's going to be the same trend, around 16% of the revenues, and the outlays is going to be the same, around 20%, according to this trend. So according to this graph, we can conclude that United States is considered a budget deficit during most of the time. Okay, then the second point says the information in many of the tables in this chapter can be found in the economic report of the president, which appears annually. Using a recent issue of the report at your library or on the internet, answer the following questions and provide some numbers to support your answers. Actually, they provide the same another website where we can find this information. To tell you the truth, unfortunately I didn't find the information that was required, so I should found this information throughout internet. So the first one, which actually we can take this information out the chapter, is about the figure 1, because it shows that the government revenue as a percentage of local income has increased over time. Is this increase primarily attributable to changes in federal government revenue or in state and local government revenue? So basically, we have here, as we saw previously in our chapter, the financial overview of the United States government, we visualize that actually there is a trend, there is a growth of the GDP as a percentage of the revenue as the percentage of the GDP. So here we visualize that it has increased both with a great slope after the Second World War, naturally, because during this war the government taxed in a higher way to finance in some way the war. But after that total government peak, it was like kind of the average. It was practically, we can say that it still remain the same. So here we visualize that the higher part of the revenue is the federal, and the state and local they complement the other part, but they are actually, we can say that just like 1/3 of the federal revenue. Here, the second point, the second part B of 2B says, looking at the combined revenue of the federal government and state local governments, how has the composition of total revenue changed over time? Are personal income taxes more or less important? Social insurance taxes? Corporate profit tax. So here you can go through this link. Actually, in the information of the video, you can access to the same link I'm going to provide you, this one. So I found this one just like surfing on internet, and basically what I found here in the Tax Policy Center, it was something really nice graph, because here we have the total federal receipts by source of the share of national GDP. Again, we have here the as a percentage of the GDP, and here we can find that actually the all all of the receipts, they remain almost the same, just with two main changes. The first trend that changed because it increased throughout the last 60 years is the social insurance tax. It became the second more important income for the federal government, just like became from 2% in 1950 through around 6% in the current year. The other trend that we can represent here, that it has gently decreased, constant throughout most of the last 40 years, and with an important recover in the last 4 years, we can see this one, the corporate income tax, with the maximum value was around 6%, and nowadays we have 2%. Here we have the higher one, which is the individual income tax, and this one, which was the third, the very beginning of this graph, and was the last one, is the excise tax. And this one we have other taxes in the fourth position. Here we have another question that actually I found the same and just surfing internet. It was like looking at the combined expenditures of the federal government and state and local governments. How have the relative shares of transfer payments and purchases of goods and services changed over time? As you visualized before, I just had in consideration the federal receipts, and here I just have in consideration the state and local direct general expenditures throughout 1977 to 2012. So here, again, we have here as the total of the, actually here is not the GDP, we have here the, I guess, the participation, would say the share, and we have the higher one is the key K-12 education. The second one we have public welfare, which has increased until values of 18.8%, and they to tell the truth, matter of fact, I can say that this remains almost the same. Just this one, 10%, which is higher education, health and hospital hospitals with 9.3, highways with 6.1, and police, it remains almost the same. Okay, yeah, it keeps actually the same during all the years. So naturally, you can find the other one just for the federal government to represent the same idea. Here, the third question says, the chapter states that the elderly population in the United States is growing more rapidly than the total population. Actually, it's not just a trend from United States, but also for another parts of the world. As an example, we can say that Europe, they have the same trend. So the elderly population, they are growing faster. So in particular, the number of workers is rising slowly, naturally, because in this case the born rate is different than people that they are getting older. And this time we have, while the number of retirees is rising quickly. So concerned about the future of Social Security, some members of Congress propose a freeze on the program. So the first situation says, this is a really open question, and you can analyze from your point, just if you have the argument to keep the idea, because actually it's not something that has the real true about this fact. So the first point says, if total expenditures were frozen, what would happen to benefits per retiree, to tax payments per worker? In this case, we need to assume that Social Security taxes and receipts are balanced each year. So it means that we need to take into account that all the income need to be the same as the expenditure. Is what we call a balance. Is not a surplus nor a deficit. So this is the case. So here, if imagine this scenario that we freeze this Social Security benefit. So we have that, unfortunately, the benefits per retiree will be lower. Okay, so they will have less income, less benefits. Okay, so definitely the retiree welfare could be lower. Then, naturally, all the workers that in some way they support, okay, they sponsor this policy, they don't pay such as those taxes that they paid before in order to compensate in some way. Okay, so the tax payments will be lower. Now, when we have the second situation, imagine that benefits per retiree were frozen. What would happen to total expenditures, to tax payment per worker? It's gonna be exactly the same, because remember that this Social Security is one of the most important programs for the government. So if they don't need, or they don't have to pay those huge quantities, definitely total expenditures will be lower, because they don't need to pay that, because the benefit is frozen. And then the tax payments, again, they don't need to pay this. But we are here what we call in economics ceteris paribus. All the other stuff remains the same, because if this Social Security, even they don't need to pay that, but workers, they still pay the same quantity, and this that was previously provided to Social Security is going to be provided to police, to war. Then the tax payment per worker will remain the same. But we are assuming here that ceteris paribus. We are just focusing in this part, in this particular point. Now, if tax payment per worker were frozen, what would happen of total expenditures, to benefits, to per retiree? Again, when we freeze that, the total expenditures will be lower. And at this time, as I said before, assuming that all money rising is for retiree program, then the tax payment per worker will be lower. What do your answers to part A, B, and C imply about difficult decisions faced by policymakers? This is definitely what we call a trade-off, because you have one position which is going to be charged less to current workers, okay, or in this case, cut some benefits to retiree people. Definitely, retiree people will still receive this money, but it's going to be paid by current workers. And remember, the current workers, they are less, or they are growing less than the elderly people that they become retiree. So for this reason, it's a really high burden to the current workers. Then at this time, it's so hard to find how to finance higher retiree amount of people with current workers. Definitely, it's going to be, even if you charge companies, remember, this share is going to be split by the company and the current workers. Then what is could be possible is, at the end, is a kind of policy with lower benefits, which is going to be lower payments, or still they remain the same, but this cake, it has to be divided the same quantity to more people that they are becoming retiree. But one important fact is, like, the old retiree people, they need to consume. So if they have left less money, so consumption will be affected. And at this point, retiree people that they consume due to decrease of the income, they won't consume. So at this time, it's going to be affected what we call the multiplier in economics. This fact that make, okay, the retiree people consume, so they go to the supermarket. In supermarket, imagine all these people, they are people that they are in the age to work, okay, so they won't receive this income previously, so they could be cut on wages, or even places to jobs. So it's going to be kind of a cycle. So in some way, it's going to be even an effect to the same current workers. So the fourth point says, suppose you're a typical person in United States economy. So here is the case. You pay 4% of your income in a state income tax. So here is the first fact. You have all your income, you need to pay 4%. This is what we call the state income tax. Then 15.3% of your labor earnings and federal payroll taxes. So this one is for your federal payroll taxes. Then you also pay federal income taxes as in Table 3. Table 3 we have here, which is provided by the same book. Then it says, how much tax of each type do you pay if you earn $20,000 a year? Taking all taxes into account, what are your average marginal tax rates? Then we're going to figure out what's going on. So here is the money that you need to pay for the state income tax. So it's going to be the total income that you receive per year is going to be 20,000. Then the state income tax is going to be 800. Then the federal payroll taxes is going to be, again, of your labor earnings. So it's going to be 15.3% of your 20,000. So then it's going to be $3,060. Then this taxable income is going to be the remain. It's going to be the subtraction of 20,000 minus 800 minus 3,660, and this is going to be charged by 15% because you are going to be around this part. From this is going to be your taxable income. Then it's going to be 3,000. Then at this time, I'm sorry, here is going to be this 3,000. It's going to be actually it's going to be this one 2,421. Then we have this one, which is going to be the total tax, which is going to be 6,281 over 20,000. It turns out 31.41%. This is your average tax. Then your marginal tax will be exactly when the tax overpass this value, which is going to be the next stage of the taxable income. It will be 25%. So this is going to be the marginal tax when you need to pay more. So now when you have this one for $40,000, you have a higher revenue. Then the state income tax is going to be this one, the federal payroll tax is going to be this one, and the federal payroll tax is going to be this value 6,120, and then the taxable income is going to be again this 15% of this value, and then it's going to be this one, and your total taxes is going to be 12,562, and then the average test is going to be remain the same, and then if you overcome this value, it's going to be 25%. Then the last point of this video is about some states exclude necessities such as food and clothing from their sales tax. Other states do not. Discuss the merits of this exclusion, consider both efficiency and equity. So here, when you exclude them, the necessities as food and clothing, basically you gain on equity, because when you charge them, it doesn't differentiate if when you are paying for food or clothing, you are rich or you are poor. So as a percentage, as our average tax is going to be definitely higher for poor people. So for this reason, we gain on equity. And then other part what we have in terms of efficiency, we have something, because when you don't charge any tax, you automatically you take out or you roll out the dead weight loss. It will disappear. And the other part, which is about efficiency, it's important to take into account that it's between quotation marks. It's really easy to charge these goods. You just need to pay for that one share. Well, the share is going to be given to the government. So in terms of taxes, this is a low administrative burden. So that's it. So that's all. As you notice, it's kind of the subtle this chapter, but I hope it is worth, and it provides an idea how you can solve these exercises. And any doubt, any suggestion, anything that maybe could be better, I'm open to these suggestions. So have a great day and see you in the next video. Bye bye.